my name is Johan and I work here at Noodle. Today we're going to continue with episode 2 of our tutorial series where we build the Star Coffee example app from scratch. In this video we're going to hook up the login pages that we created in the first video to a backend and use a user management module to handle logins and logouts and creation of new users. So let's jump right in. Okay, so here I am in Noodle, and in the newest version of Noodle that you can now download, we actually have 2 sample projects. We also have a new to-do app, which is a little bit smaller than the Star Coffee app. But let's continue with our coffee app here. So I'm going to open this up, and we will probably be greeted with this view here. And so let me just make the preview a little bit smaller so it doesn't interfere with the video there. Perfect. So if you remember in the previous video, we created this login screen as well as this create account screen. And today we're going to hook these up to a backend. And in order to do that, the first thing we need to do is to enable the Noodl Cloud Services. And you do that up here with this little icon. So I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to click the Enable button here. And that gives me access to the default cloud services, which is perfectly fine to use for this. Or if you want to, you can create a completely new backend. In this case, we're just going to use the default here. And so if I click on the little dashboard here, we can see what has actually been created for us. And in this case, it's just 2 database tables. It's one table called role and another called user. And we're interested in this user table. And as you can see, it's completely empty now. And once we're done here today, there should be at least 1 user. So for now, we're going to jump back into the Noodle editor, and we'll get back to the cloud service dashboard here in a bit. Okay, so back in Noodle, the other thing I need is to install the cloud services user management module. So I'm just going to add that by first going here and then clicking Add. So now that's imported successfully, and that will give us access to a couple of extra nodes that we really want to use. So if we look at the pages that we have the Create Account page as well as the Login page, and right now we're looking at the Login page. So let's start with that. So here I want to be able to log in. And the user management module, that actually gave me a new node called Login. So I'm going to add that. And if we look at this node, it takes 2 inputs. It takes a username and a password. And so I'm going to connect the text input for the username here, the text to username. And then you can also see that the login node has a login action. So we're going to hook that up as well. But first, let's connect the password. And the password we're going to get from this text input field here. So I'm going to make a connection here. Let's see, text to password. Perfect. And then here's our login button. So when I click on that button, that's when I want to log in. Excellent. Now, I happen to know that from this login node, you can also get some error messages. So if I just do this, we can see that some outputs from this node is we get a success signal if it's successful, the login, or we get an error signal with an error message and also potentially an error code. So I think it would be great to display these error messages to the user if they do something wrong, like, for instance, use a username that doesn't exist or a password that doesn't exist. So let's add another text input field. Sorry, just a text node, not an input field. because we're just going to be displaying some text. And I'm just going to put it here right after the password. And here we can see it. So let's move it down a little bit so it's not so close to the password input field. And since this is an error message, let's change the color to something that's a little bit more red. I have that written down here. Let me just look that up. So it's going to be E8423A. Yeah, that's a nice red that is representative of an error message. So let's actually also call this node, give it a name of error message. And let's use our Roboto regular as the font, and we'll leave everything else. I think it doesn't need to be that big. We could make it bigger if we wanted to, but let's leave it like this. Now, I don't actually want this to always be there. So I only want to display this if we actually got an error. So one way to do that is by using a switch node. So I'm going to create a switch node. And I'm going to connect the switch node to the error message here. And I'm going to connect a switch node is basically like a states node that is either on or off. And so I'm going to connect the current state of the switch node to the mounted state of the text node here. Like so. And this switch node is false to begin with, so that's why it disappeared here, which is actually what I want. I'm going to call this, instead of just switch, let's call it something that makes a little bit more sense. So let's call it something like display error state, something like that. And then we're going to connect from the login button. If we get an error, then we want to set the switch into the on state, because then we do want to show this error message. But if it's successful, then we're just going to turn it off, because we might have received some error messages, and then as soon as we log in and it's successful, we should probably just disappear those messages. And then the last thing I need to do here is connect from the login node the actual error message to the text here, so that we display the error message. Cool. So let's see if this actually works. I mean, one thing is we actually don't have any users in the database, so it shouldn't work, but we should get some type of error. So let's try a username of my name and a password, whatever, something. And now when I hit the login button here, we're going to try and log in. But as you can see, we got an error message here saying that we either have an invalid username or password. That's perfect. That seems to be working so far. Now, we're never going to be able to actually log in because we don't, as you remember, have any users in the user table here. But we do have a page here where we can go to create a new account. And in order to do that, now I've switched over to the create account page here, we're going to use the sign up node. So I've added that. And it's very similar to the login node, except for it can take an email as well. But in this case, we've kept it kind of simple, so we've omitted the email. So let's connect the username to username. So the text from the text input here to username. And then the same, the password text to the password. And we will be adding a check here in a little bit to make sure that the password and the confirm password, that those two are the same, but we'll get to that. And then we have the create button here. and we want to connect that to the click from the create button. Sorry, let's from the create button here. Click from the create button to sign up. And the sign up node also gives us error messages if anything happens to go wrong. So let's copy a similar setup to what we have here for the errors into the create account page. So I'm just going to copy the switch and the error message node here. So I've selected those two nodes and then a Control-C to copy, and then I'm just going to paste it straight in here. I'm going to take this node and I'm going to take it underneath the confirm password right there. I'm going to take the switch here and we're going to say that if it was a success to sign up, then we're going to turn this off. If we had an error message, we want to display the error message, so then the switch should be on. And then we want to connect the error message from here into the text node here. Now, before we continue on, let's also make sure that the password and the confirmed password are the same. So let's make a expression node, and we're just going to check that we're going to do a string compare. So I'm going to call the first string pass1, and then if it triple equals pass2. So this text is the pass1, and this text here is the pass2. If those two are equal, then, and we also get a click here, then we should sign up. So I'm going to add a condition here. Condition, and I'm going to take the result from this expression, and that's the condition. So it will either be true or false. And instead of signing up here, we're going to, when we click on the create account button, we're going to click here and we're going to evaluate this condition. And if password 1 is equal to password 2, then this should evaluate to true, and in that case, we should try and sign up. Now, something else could still be wrong, but we're catching that here and getting that error message and displaying it. But if this is false, then we have a different error that the sign-up node doesn't actually inform us about. So let's handle that on our own. So I'm going to add a variable here. Variable. And I'm going to give it a name of error message. And I'm going to call the, I'm actually going to call this local error message. That's the name I should give it. And the reason I'm using a variable here, it's maybe a little overkill, but I'm using it so that there might be other places where we do want to set some error messages that are originating from our application here and not from the back end. So the variable, it's going to be connected to a string that's going to hold the actual error message. And so in this case, it's passwords do not match. And so I'm going to connect that string, the value of the string, to the value of the variable. And then when we evaluate if the password 1 equals password 2, if that's false, then we're going to set this variable. And the value of the variable is going to be connected to this error message here. So value to text. Perfect. So let's see here what happens. So if I start by just inputting a username, Johan, and then trying to create an account here, we get an error message from the sign up node saying that we cannot sign up a user with empty passwords. That's great. So if I put just one letter in here, or however many, I'm going to put in a password here, and then I don't put anything in here, and I click create account, now we actually get our local error message here. So we're doing a little bit of validation here. But if I now input my password here as well, and I now know that these two are the same, and now I click create, now we actually got a success signal here. And if we go into the parse dashboard now, we should see that the user, actually the user table now has a user with the username Johan, and that's me. Obviously we can't see my password, but that's perfect. That is actually working. But we didn't actually navigate anywhere, and let's do that now. So once you've either created an account and everything goes okay, or you log in from this page, you want to be taken to the home page of the application. So I'm not going to create the full home page, but let's create a temporary home page so that we can see that everything kind of works. So I'm going to add another component here. I'm going to call it home page. And the home page, it's just going to be a group. And we're going to just add a couple of text fields here. One text field that I want to display the username. So we also now, because we added the user management module, have a user node. And once you're authenticated, this user node will contain your email or username and a bunch of other stuff. So in this case, I'm just going to use the username here. And that's enough for now. So let's see here. So when we're on the login page, if everything goes okay and we are logged in, meaning we get a success signal here, then we actually want to navigate to the home page. Now, if we look at the app the way we set it up, you might remember I said, okay, I'm going to create this group here with a navigation stack for the login pages. Now we're going to add to this. I'm going to create a new group. I'm just going to create it outside here and then drag it in. And this group is going to be, let's see here, that's going to be my home. And it's going to contain a navigation stack for my home pages. And you see everything gets messed up here because I add this, and it's because they're both mounted at the same time. And we don't actually want that. So I'm going to add a states node. And I'm going to keep track of if we are on the login pages or if we should be on the home pages. And I'm going to unmount and mount these groups depending on where we should be. I'm going to add a couple of states. I'm going to add the login state, and I'm going to add the home state. And I'm going to say if we are at home, then the home group should be mounted. And if we're at login, then the login should be mounted. Like that. So now if I actually reload this, we should see just the login pages, and we can see here that the home is not mounted. So in this navigation stack, we're going to give it a new name. It's going to be the home stack, and the start page for this is going to be my home page here. And we're going to use that user node that we just used. We're going to use that user node to decide if we should be at the login page or at the home page. So we should be at login. Actually, we should be at the home page if the user is actually authenticated. So authenticated, then we should go to home. And in this case, I am actually logged in. And you can see here, we actually went to home and we see my username here. And if we're not authenticated, then we should be at login. So let's add an inverter here. An inverter is basically something that looks at a Boolean and just inverts it. So if something is true, the output from this node will be false. If the input is false, the output will be true. So we just want to reverse check. So if authenticated is not true, then we should be at the login page. Okay, that's cool. But right now on the home page, there's no way for us to actually log out, and the home page looks terrible. But we're going to get to that in the next episode. So let's go back here to the home page. Excuse me. Let's add underneath this. Actually, let's do this. So let's make it a slightly larger, like maybe 24. Let's use our Roboto, something like that. Let's put it in the middle and put that down a little bit. And then underneath this, let's copy this and let's put in something that says log out. And when we click on this log out, we want to log out the current user. And to do that, we have a node called log out. So I'm just going to get the click signal from the text here and connect that to the logout action. So now if I click on logout here, the authenticated property of the user node should become false, and that means we should actually go to login. So let me click there, and there you go. So that is working nicely. So let's try and log in here again. Now I'm using my username and the password that I used. I'm going to click login, and that takes me to our current homepage. That's not that nice looking. And if I click log out, I'm logged out again. Now, one thing that we should add as well is actually on the create account page. And in this Start Coffee app, we do want to make sure that when we sign up, users, the new user that is being signed up, that they get their rewards points initialized. And if we look at the backend right now, we can see that on the users here, we have a bunch of different data that we're keeping track of, but we don't actually have any points for this user Johan here. So one way to do that is, again, in here in our create account page, I'm going to use the user node, and I'm going to have some custom data. And that custom data is our number of points. And the number of points, they should be set to 0 initially. So I'm going to use a number, and the value is going to be 0. And let's give this a good name, like initial rewards points, like so. And let's connect that to the points input here. So the value here to points. And we want to save this when we get a success signal from the signup node. So I'm going to connect the success here to the save action, which will then, for the user that was just created, we will save that they have 0 points. So let's try this out. Let's create a second user. Let's call this Johan 2. And password, the same password. And I'm going to click create account here. So now we see we have Johan 2 is signed in. And if we look in the backend, click the dashboard here, we will see that we now have 2 users. We have Johan 2 and the first one that we created. And we will also see that we now have points. And the first one that we created, the first user we created, does not have anything here. So let's give me some points here. So we'll give Johan 100 points, and Johan 2, he will have 0 points. So let's hit enter there. So I just double clicked in here to kind of update that value. So let's go back to Noodle and see, let's display the points value down here. So let's go to the home page. Let's add another text here. And we'll put that in the middle. And let's add a text format. String format is what it's called. And let's say points, colon, and then our curly braces and points. And from the user, if I add the custom points here that we have, then I can get that from this. So I'm going to now connect the points to points here. And for Johan 2, it should be 0. So you can already see that here, but we'll get that formatted text and put it into the text node. So Johan 2, he has 0 points. Now let's log out by clicking here. And then let's log in as the first Johan that we just gave 100 points to. So it's in here, log in, and there you go, 100 points. Okay, and that's pretty much what I wanted to show you guys in this episode. In the following episodes, we will start building out that homepage and hooking up to headless CMS and building everything else out. Thank you for watching, and happy noodling.